When Dragonflight launched, we were given the new talent trees, branching paths of player decisions reminiscent of the days of old. Gone were the old three-choice talents that have been around since Mists of Pandaria. But these trees are not the old classic through Cataclysm trees. Sure, they share some similarities, but they function quite different as a whole. I have some mixed opinions about these talent trees that I want to talk about today. First, I want to say that I love these trees, at least in theory. Between the pathing, choice nodes, and splitting them into separate class and spec trees, I think they have more potential than any other talent system I've ever seen in a game. However, I think their potential is being squandered in their current implementation. Let's use Guardian Druids as an example, mainly because it's the class I've been playing the most, but also because it's a very good example of the problems I'm going to bring up. And let's start with the class tree, as I think this is where most of my problems with the system are. Now, there are a lot of choices here, but so many of them are useless to me. And to make matters worse, some of the good talents are locked behind the useless ones. Let's look at Feline Swiftness. It increases my movement speed. Great, that's useful to everyone. But it's locked behind Rip, which is an ability I will literally never use. Stampeding Roar. Basically mandatory for all druids at all times. Locked behind Soothe, one of the most situational abilities in the entire game. Astral Influence increases the range of all of my abilities. But it's locked behind 3 balance abilities that I can't use in bear form. Innervate is a good raid utility spell, but it requires me to basically throw away at least 5 points just to get to it. Basically, what I'm getting at is, if the talent isn't useful for every spec, it shouldn't be in the class tree. And if it's super niche, it shouldn't be gatekeeping mandatory talents. Maybe it should even just be baseline. Now you might be thinking, if they take all of that out, there would be nothing left. But I think there is so much more potential here. Imagine, if you will, that at the very top of the class tree, you had 2 choice nodes. One gives you the option of making either haste or crit a better stat for you, and the other doing the same for versatility and mastery. Things like the effect that makes haste reduce the cooldowns of abilities, as well as the GCD, or the effect that makes crits hit for more than 200%. It doesn't really have to be some super complicated effect to make it interesting. It just has to make one stat better for you. In fact, it being as simple to understand as possible would probably be for the best. Then, later in the tree, you get another choice node. One choice making both haste and crit better, and the other doing the same for versatility and mastery. With just 3 talents, you would be able to determine your stat priority. That would be a customization choice that this game has never given players in the nearly 20 years it's been online. Then you fill the tree with things that every spec might find useful. Mobility options, defensive abilities, passive stat boosts, group and raid utility like Innervate or Stampeding Roar, crowd control, increased attack range, silences, interrupts, raid buffs, raid debuffs, even major CDs like Incarnation or Avenging Wrath. There are plenty of things that can be used to fill the tree that aren't just useless fluff. Sure, some of it might be mandatory or not super interesting, but it's a whole lot better than throwing points into things that you will never use just to get to the thing below it. Now let's move on to the spec tree side. And while I could probably complain about the Guardian tree specifically for hours, I'll make this more generally applicable to all classes and specs. Again, I see a lot of potential here, but I think the thing that's holding it back is that a lot of the decisions you make here are situational. If a fight needs AoE, I pick up things like Raise and Twin Moonfire. If I'm going to take a bunch of damage, I just pick up Earth Warden or Improved Survival Instincts. You can make a Mythic Plus spec, a Farming spec, an AoE Trash spec. Hell, sometimes you even make a different spec for each raid boss. The decisions feel shallow, and they're kind of decided for you instead of by you. And for the most part, they don't really affect how you play the game that much. Most of the choices just make you better in a given scenario, but don't really change how you actually play. I wish the decisions in these trees were playstyle choices that determine how the class plays, instead of just being changed based on the situation. Things like choosing between an upgraded version of Mangle that does more damage and generates more rage, but at the cost of a longer CD, or giving Mangle 2 charges, effectively letting me either slow down or speed up my rotation based on how I like to play. Maybe if I go down one side of the tree, I could be a Laser Bear that uses more Moonfire-like abilities. Or I could go down the other side and be a more traditional rip you to shreds with my claws and teeth bear. Or maybe I could go down the middle and get a little bit of each. The whole appeal of talent trees is player choice. Choice that lets the player determine how they want to play. But this has always been a bit of an illusion, where the choices either don't really change how the game feels, or just gives you the option of playing the right way or the wrong way. And for the first time in a long time, I think this system has the potential to actually give players real choices. Would players still min-max to find the best builds? Yes, obviously. That's never going to not happen, regardless of what Blizzard develops. Players will optimize the fun out of everything if given the opportunity. There will always be cookie cutter builds that are just objectively better. But I think the idea of giving players the chance at customizing their class to play the way that they want it to is too enticing to pass up. That's all just my opinion though. Let me know what you guys think of it. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video and have a nice day.